Yeah, time for League One run-in analysis. We did have some games over the weekend. The big one, the big result, was Wrexham 1, Stockport 0. Jay Rodriguez scoring the rebound from his own penalty that had been saved by Corey Adai. A penalty that was, to be kind, somewhat controversially awarded, having not originally been awarded, and was given for a perceived handball, which I thought was incredibly harsh, and James McLean did quite a good job of persuading the linesman and or referee to have a rethink, shall we say, and give it belatedly. Corey Adai then saved the pen. It was actually one of the most Corey Adai things I've ever seen, mate. Adai saves the pen brilliantly, and then Rodriguez sort of hits one on the turn through his legs into the goal. And you think, you've done an amazing thing, and then something where I think maybe you could have done a bit better there. Another big result was Peterborough 3, Charlton 0. Charlton so good recently, but here they failed to score when they had some early pressure. They went 1-0 down following an absolutely sensational goalmouth scramble from an indirect free kick 8 yards out. They thought they'd cleared the danger, but the ball fell to Poku about 20 yards out, and he found a smidgen of space and crossed it onto the head of Sam Hughes to put them ahead. And Peterborough finally playing the sort of sexy, exciting, quick, skill attacking football that we want to see from them, picking Charlton off on the counter-attack in the second half. Could have scored more than the two that they did. Mothersill, Poku, Odo, Jones, Hayes off the bench. Really exciting to watch. And Posh are now unbeaten in 7 with 4 wins. Charlton, the highest position team they've beaten this season. So a big day for Posh. A big dig day. They dug deep and they won. Another big result and a big news last week was Crawley and Scott Lindsey's return. They beat Bristol Rovers in his first game back, and they did so pretty handsomely, playing some really nice attacking football in the first half. Hepburn Murphy with an excellent assist for Kamari Doyle, and played some good stuff. Bristol Rovers, one of the worst away teams in the country. It means that we've now had Mike Williamson go to Carlisle, get replaced by Scott Lindsey at MK Dons, who was replaced by Rob Elliott at Crawley, and all of them have been sacked before the end of the season. And Lindsey is now back up at Crawley. I think it feels right for the fans. I think, given the fracture between the ownership group and the fan base, it's definitely a good move from that point of view, and this was a terrific start for Lindsey. But as we'll touch on in the relegation section, they've still got a lot of work to do if they want to stay in the division. Blackpool beat Northampton 2-0 and did so playing some quite sexy attacking football, quick, direct, with width, with 2 up top. One of them, Ashley Fletcher, in really good form at the moment. Ennis scoring as well, and Sonny Carey in fantastic form at the moment. Blackpool will discuss whether they might have it in them to make an assault on the playoffs. Probably not, spoiler. And Barnsley drew 1-1 with Cambridge. Same could probably be said for them. Haven't had a huge uptick in results since sacking Darryl Clark. Lincoln 0, Exeter 0 was a match that happened. So there's the match roundup. Now we get into run-in analysis, starting with the automatic promotion places, where Birmingham are 9 points clear of second, 12 points clear of third. They have games in hand, and they're going to win the league. And the only question is, how many points do they accrue in doing so? Second is where it gets interesting. George Wrexham are second on 74. Wycombe are behind them 3 points with a game in hand and with a better goal difference. And then 5 back from them, so 8 away from second, is Charlton, and Stockport 1 point back from them. A super damaging weekend for Charlton and Stockport. Are they now removed from this conversation?
I mean, pretty much. It's not done, but off the back of Saturday, it feels very unlikely now, surely, that they'll be able to bridge that gap. The manner of defeat for Charlton and for Stockport to go away to Wrexham and losing the way they did, I think it's going to be hard for them now. I mean, they're just basically reliant on both Wycombe and Wrexham really dropping off. But this is a really good little tussle, this, for the top two, because, you know, Wycombe have a game in hand, but a 3 points shy of Wrexham. So the way I'm kind of looking at this is Wycombe have a home game against the bottom team in the league in Shrewsbury. Now, that's absolutely not a gimme, especially given who will be in the dugout for Shrews, and it would be very typical should Gareth Ainsworth get an unlikely win for a nearly already relegated side to damage his beloved Wycombe, especially on April Fool's Day. Or April Fool's night, I should say. But basically, if you take that game and you say that Wycombe are in for what, two points from that game, if you put on probability terms, then you're basically looking at a shootout between the two sides in the remaining fixtures if you use that as the game in hand. And the fact that Wycombe, all of their remaining games, apart from that Shrewsbury game, are against teams in 13th or above. So they host Charlton, they host Stockport, they go to Huddersfield, they go to Bolton, they go to Reading, they go to Orient, and they host Lincoln, who are looking really sharp again now, and they host Stevenage. So Stevenage at home is their second easiest game left, and the easiest game if you take out that game in hand. And that, in my mind, would mean that if Mike Dodds is able to lead Wycombe into the top two this season, it will be an unbelievable effort, because that is such a difficult run off the back of a long season where they've had massive upheaval, which has impacted their performances and their results. On the flip side to that, Wrexham still have to play Bristol Rovers and Burton at home. They still go to Cambridge. Their fixtures are far, far easier. You're only looking at a home game against Charlton and an away trip to Blackpool and an away trip to Lincoln as being like the really kind of tough ones. Otherwise, they've got 5 games against teams currently in the bottom from 16th downwards. Like that, it just seems to me like Wrexham are in the driving seat in terms of having points on the board. They're in the driving seat as to playing better at the moment, and they're in the driving seat as to who has the easier fixtures. And from here, they have to be the likelier one of the two to finish second. And as I say, if we can pull it off, it will be some job.
Richard Kone, you are already having one of the more iconic League One seasons that I can ever remember. It is over to you and your incredible set of skills to basically rail against everything that George just outlined, all of which points towards Wrexham finishing second and being automatically promoted to Birmingham City, behind Birmingham City. Kone is the wild card because he's so good. He looks, pretty much back in business. He scored against Rotherham. That was a big win for Wycombe on Thursday night, an impressive win as well. And he's absolutely excellent. And I feel like if you're having the sort of season that he is there a sort of Roy of the Rovers type 6-week period where Kone could just drag Wycombe? Take them close, at least. I hope so. But Mike Dodds is not finding it that easy there at the moment. And Parkinson, well, whether you enjoy watching Wrexham or not, and whether you, like me, watched them play Stockport and couldn't quite believe that they went in at halftime 1-0 up when it felt to me like Stockport looked like much the better football team, well, you've just been Phil Parkinsoned. I've been Phil Parkinsoned many times. Most teams that have played against Wrexham over the last few years have been Phil Parkinsoned, and they will probably Phil Parkinson themselves to the second tier. My excitement rating for the League One automatics, 2 out of 5.
Shame.
When it comes to the playoffs...
Do you know what? I'm 5 out of 5 for all of them. Apart from the Championship relegation.
That's why I haven't asked you, because there's nothing interesting there.
God!
If someone reviews everything 5 stars, I don't care about their opinion. There's no jeopardy there. There's no thought.
This isn't a review. This is excitement levels.
I'll
tell you at the end how good they were.
The League One playoffs is perhaps a little more intriguing, although if we're ruling out Charlton and Stockport from the autos, but they are teams that we think are pretty bloody good, and they're 4th and 5th. Charlton 6 points above 7th, so a 6-point cushion, and Stockport with 5. That might just leave one playoff spot. Is there anything about Charlton and Stockport that you could see being a little wobbly, George? Because that's going to make this portion of the table more interesting than just 7 teams going for one spot.
No, I think the gap's probably big enough. They got Stockport have a 5-point gap to Bolton, albeit Bolton and Huddersfield have games in hand. I think it always comes with that word of warning that will be ringing in the ears of Leyton Orient fans that teams who do go on these mesmerising runs, such as Charlton, there can sometimes be a reversal, and variance can come back and bite you. I think in Charlton's case, they have just genuinely been very good. I don't think it's a case where they've been getting a bit fortunate and racking up a few wins in some tight games. They've been by far the better side in most of those games. But it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from such a damaging defeat and such a poor performance on Saturday. So I think they'll be fine, but it wouldn't be a huge shock to me, especially with Huddersfield, Bolton, Reading, Orient all have... I don't personally think Reading and Orient are going to kind of fight their way into this, but... they'll be kept honest. at the very least.
Well, I definitely take what you mean about Orient. I mean, they had that long losing run, which was snapped the other day with their first win in a while. A game where they were second best, realistically, against Blackpool. When it comes with Reading, I'm genuinely not really sure, because there's good and bad here, right? They are 2 points off it. They've been in and around it all season. They haven't dropped off in terms of results massively under Noel Hunt. The move from Sellers to Hunt hasn't had a massive impact on how the team looks and plays, I don't think. They are 10 unbeaten, but it's one of those unbeaten runs with 4 wins and 6 draws, where it's one of those where actually a couple of the draws at home, you know, if you're a playoff team, if you're a top 6 team, you want to be putting those teams away. You'd almost rather have, 7 wins and 3 defeats in a way. Then there's Bolton above them, who started so well under Stephen Schumacher and have lost their last 2. Then there's Huddersfield, who was sliding all the way down the table from top 2 contenders to out the playoffs altogether before sacking Mike Duff, getting John Worthington in, and absolutely thrashing Crawley, a really poor team, who then sacked their manager in his first game, therefore changing the atmosphere around the place completely. Whether that's changed the performance level and therefore the results over their next 9 games remains to be seen. But it's quite an uncertain picture for me, and I think that sums it up. I have been quite impressed, as I said in the weekend roundup, with Blackpool's attacking play in the last few weeks. I think they deserve to get more from that game against Leyton Orient. And if they had done, they'd be in a prettier position, obviously. They're 7 points off it. It's quite a lot with 8 games to go. I was trying to work out what's a realistic chunk of points to whittle down in 8 games, and realistically 7 is probably the max, I think, particularly when we're talking about playoffs rather than, say, relegation zone, when clubs pick up fewer points. So I think you're saying one of Huddersfield or Bolton, but I'm really interested to know what you make of those 2 teams at the moment, because I think there's holes to pick in both, but also clearly 2 teams with, really good players.
Yeah, it feels like that's kind of the crux of it, where they have very good players, and probably their kind of baseline is still going to be relatively high, which is seen by the fact that both have sat managers this season and they still sit either just in or just outside the playoffs. Bolton, I think, have the easiest fixtures, or should have the easiest fixtures of the sides going into this. But that's based on kind of league position. And when you consider that, Rotherham, Stevenage, I mean, they have their away games at Barnsley. Barnsley, the one you're looking at as being relatively positive given their struggles after Darrell Clark's been shown the door. But Lincoln, Stevenage, Rotherham, they're kind of awkward games against mid-table teams rather than games you didn't necessarily expect them to win. Even away at Wigan with Ryan Lone coming in probably isn't ideal timing. With Huddersfield, they've just been a really good League One side for so much of this season, and just have had 2 really poor moments. And even though I was pretty against the decision to sack Mike Duff and bring in John Worthington, the proof of the initial first pudding was pretty strong in the 5-1 defeat over Crawley, and I just wonder if that their quality will shine through eventually. So yeah, I mean, I think Orient I've got massive concerns with. I think they've got the worst expected goals ratio in the whole division since February the 1st, which is pretty alarming, and I think it's hard to make a case as to why they're going to suddenly turn around and be as strong as they were previously. With Reading, it's been unbelievable what they've managed to do this season, and given what's going on at Reading at the moment, which we will cover in the coming weeks in more depth than I'm going to now, because it deserves more of a conversation in a pod that's our usual style than in this one. But we absolutely will do that. It would be incredible if they managed to force away the playoffs given what's going on there. And I'm just, I think everyone at the club is more focused on survival rather than promotion right now. I think it looks to me like a bit of a shootout between Huddersfield and Bolton, with possibly Blackpool there to say thank you very much. I'll pick you off late on if you're both gonna stumble.
Maybe. I am feeling much more pro Blackpool sitting here today than I have been at any other time recently.
Dwight Gale, isn't?
It's a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling. Just on Reading, as you alluded to, there has been developments, and it's complicated, and it's positive in some senses, but it's also scary. It is so complicated that I really end up not wanting to say the wrong thing and spread misinformation or give false hope. I will just read what Matt Slater said, because he's an excellent reporter, saying that Reading owner Dai Yong has been confirmed by the EFL that he's failed the owners and directors test. That means he must sell or divest within 28 days of notice. If not, Reading could be suspended. We're not at that point yet, said Matt, but EFL is turning heat up on Dai to force a sale. There's a lot in there, and a lot of it pertains to Rob Kuig, the former Wycombe owner, who was a previous prospective owner. He's in some wranglings with Dai Yong. Rob Piatek is the reported current prospective owner. It's obviously a part of this as well. Yeah, complicated. Positive, I think, in some senses. It'd be great to hear from some Reading fans and how you're handling this, how you're dealing with this, and all of our thoughts, with Reading fans, because it is just desperately uncertain and therefore probably causing quite a lot of stress and anxiety. My excitement rating for the League One playoffs is a 3 out of 5. 5 out of 5 for you. Down in the League One relegation zone. So the weekend was obviously great for Crawley. Scott Lindsey back in the dugout. It was also great for Burton, who didn't play, because Crawley beat Bristol Rovers. Northampton also lost. That means the two teams who are 6 points above them are still 6 points above them and have played an extra game now. So Burton do have that game in hand. Burton also famously both in excellent form, hooray, and have some of the most disgusting fixtures you've ever seen. Boo. So it was a good weekend for them, but just quickly on Crawley, George, and the Scott Lindsey reuniting. Does it make you smile? Does it make you feel good? Do you like it?
Have to like it. There are probably some alarm bells and concerns, as I pointed out when Lindsey got the job at MK Dons, that last season does feel like one of the freakish seasons we've ever seen in terms of performance level and results. But he's obviously immensely popular there. It's somewhere where he's done some great work. Immediately, you see the players they have at their disposal. You see the assist from Russian Hepburn Murphy. You see the finish from Gordon. Like, it feels like a really good fit for what Crawley are as a club. And yes, it'll probably be next season in League Two, but he's someone who's already delivered a promotion out of League Two. So it makes sense, I think, for all parties. And as you say, from the case for the fan base to have something to get behind and to have a manager they believe in, albeit probably too late for this season, it's got to be a good thing. And for Lindsey, can put the experience at MK Dons behind him very quickly.
I mean, they've only got 2 more top half teams to play against, Crawley. So with 8 games to go, 6 of them against bottom half teams, there's a tiny chance. And they did play some nice stuff, very notably so in that first half. It looked a lot like the Scott Lindsey team that sparkled in the League Two playoffs. But they were playing against Bristol Rovers, who are a pretty embarrassing side on their travels. So I need to see them play and beat someone else before I get too excited. When it comes to Burton, is it the case that you, like me, George, just sort of really want to be excited, really like what Gary Bowyer's done, thinks maybe if there were 12 more games rather than 8 or 9, they might have more of a chance, but that the fixtures just make it really hard to imagine them picking up enough wins to close a 6-point gap?
Pretty much,
Get behind him. Get behind him.
No, I mean, I think it's unlikely. It feels to me like the difference between Burton and Bristol Rovers is going to be the fact that Rovers, the gas did a double on Burton this season. And if you basically reverse those fixtures, they probably finish in different positions. With Bristol Rovers, I keep kind of thinking, yeah, I mean, they are a team that we can, that are there to be shot at. And for all of their struggles on the road, the fact remains that they're just a quite good team at the Mem. And they have been for most of the season. They pick up a lot of points at home. They've still got to have Exeter, Mansfield, Stevenage come to town. And it's probably hard not to see them getting the requisite points in order to just keep Burton at bay. And as you say, Burton have a really difficult run of games from here. So, I mean, I would love to say that I think Burton are going to do it. But even though I'm definitely 5 out of 5 excited for this relegation scrap, I think it might be done quite soon.
It's a 2 out of 5 for me.